So I'd like to offer a really warm welcome to everybody. It's fantastic to see such a strong turnout this evening for what I'm sure is going to be a really interesting, inspiring and positive meeting. That's going to trigger fresh ideas, new volunteers and a shared sense of excitement for the future of Greyfriars Kirkyard, the iconic and unique historic graveyard that has brought us all here together tonight. So I'm going to begin by introducing myself. My name is Susan Buckham and I am the Edinburgh World Heritage Graveyards Project Manager, and I'm going to be chairing tonight's meeting. Now, the main part of tonight's event will be the questions, the comments and the discussion led by you, the meeting attendees and participants. But before we open up the floor to help shape discussions, we're going to hear from Charlotte Golledge, who is the Greyfriars Kirkyard enthusiast and volunteer who is putting her head above the parapet and asking for other volunteers to join her and to create a new Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard. But we're also going to hear from the Friends of Warriston Cemetery, Edinburgh's first and largest Friends of group. And then I'm going to give a little background quickly to the two main questions that I think you may be asking about why we might need a Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard and what other groups it might be able to work closely with. So tonight, I want to hear your ideas about what a Friends of group might achieve for Greyfriars Kirkyard. We would love to know how you feel about Greyfriars and also what your interest is in the graveyard. So just now, hopefully everybody has been muted to cut down on the background noise. But once we get to the discussion stage, just signal with your Zoom thumbs up icon, or literally with your own thumbs up, that you would like to comment and we can unmute you. Let's all use the applause icon to show when we feel a point has been really well raised. And let's remember that the chat function is always going to be open. And so that if you prefer to post your questions and comments using the chat function, please do so. And we can make sure that this information is fed back into the main discussion. So I'm going to start quickly by just giving a little bit of an insight into what Edinburgh World Heritage's role is with the Friends group. Well, Edinburgh World Heritage has long advocated for the creation of a Friends of group. We believe that this is integral to sustainable graveyard conservation. And we've set out the reasons for this and our vision for what this might look like in a report which was published in 2013. And you can see the front cover of this report on the slide just now. Now, while some things have changed over time, we still believe that the information that's set out in this report and the recommendations that are made are still highly relevant. So I'd really encourage you to go to the Edinburgh World Heritage website and take a look at the report, which can be downloaded for free. Now, Edinburgh World Heritage's commitment to supporting a new Friends of group was a major trigger for creating our new 2-year community project, which is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, entitled Making Lasting Impressions of Greyfriars Kirkyard. Now, to support the new Friends of group, we can provide training and advice on all matters relating to historic graveyards. Our project will deliver learning and interpretation activities to connect people of different backgrounds and to bring different interests together through a common focus on Greyfriars Kirkyard as a shared community place. Now, we see the new Friends group as being critical to ensure that these connections flourish in the future and are built upon. So at this stage, Edinburgh World Heritage seeks to offer volunteers a helping hand in creating the new Friends group. We will look to them to tell us what we can do to best help them on their journey to create a vibrant, independent and inclusive community group. So let's now hear from Charlotte, who wants you to help her create a Friends of group at Greyfriars Kirkyard. And then we will go on to hear about the experience of the Friends of Warriston Cemetery, who have had their own very successful group for the last 7 years. So I'm really delighted to introduce Charlotte Golledge, a local historian and author. Now, Charlotte and I first sat down and talked about establishing a Friends of group almost 2 years ago. And we did this with our dear colleague, Anne Metcalfe. Now, Anne very sadly died over the summer, but Charlotte and I both felt that we couldn't host tonight's meeting without acknowledging her warm support and commitment to creating a Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Susan. So I'm trying to stop the lump in my throat there mentioning Anne. Indeed, as Susan said, with Anne, we had quite a few chats. And basically, I suppose I should really introduce myself more and say what Greyfriars actually means to me. Now, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that I've had a lifelong love of Greyfriars. As a small child, it started off with tales of a faithful wee dog, who we all know as Bobby. This then progressed into a deep-rooted interest in burial grounds. And then 17 years ago, I started to do my own documentation of the stones in Greyfriars. As by that point, I was already aware of the erosion happening on some of the stones and wanted to do my own personal part to preserve the words that were so often lovingly chosen for a past loved one. This led into me doing an updated version of James Brown's book on the inscriptions, basically walking around with my now much dog-eared copy and trusty pen. And then we just fast forward again to today, and the graveyard has established itself firmly in my own personal story, not only through one of its inhabitants being part of my dissertation, but also a book that barely scratches the story of the kirkyard. However, like the words that have decayed on some of the stones, my part in Greyfriars will fade, and I want to do what I can to enable this precious ground to be enjoyed by many more future generations. So basically, I'm hoping that together with like-minded individuals, we can form a group, the Friends of Greyfriars, and together look at ways to help conserve and enhance this very special place, providing support as well as being hands-on on the ground, so to speak. Already it is at the heart of the local community and is used and enjoyed by many different people. It is a collection of these people that is needed to create initially a committee who will work together to create a mission statement and look to what the Friends of Greyfriars want to achieve. Your connection to Greyfriars can be near or far. Anyone and everyone is welcome. All that is required is a commitment to the preservation of this historic kirkyard, which can be achieved in many different ways with groups with many different ways which the groups with discussion can set out its goals. In short, as Susan said, I'm sticking my head above the parapet to see who else is willing to join in. I can't at this stage exactly say what the goals of the group will be, as it will be a community group with a collection of thoughts and opinions, drawing on different people's strengths, knowledge, expertise, and I am personally really excited about the possibility of us setting up this group. So I want to thank you all for attending this evening.
Brilliant, fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. That's a really warm call to arms if ever I heard one. So I'd like to introduce next Dr. Jeff Sanders. So I first met Jeff a number of years ago when we sat down to talk about an archaeological project that he was managing. But the topic quickly digressed once we realised that we had a shared passion for historic graveyards. And I remember very, very well the public meeting to create a Friends of group for Warriston Cemetery, which took place 7 years ago. So I'm absolutely thrilled that Jeff is able to come along tonight and share with us the experience of what happened next for the Friends of Warriston Cemetery. Over to you, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Susan, and hello, everyone. I don't know if you all know Warriston Cemetery at all, but if you don't, please do visit either online or in person. it lends itself to an atmospheric walk and taking photos like the one shown. I won't go into the background of this 19th century garden cemetery in North Edinburgh, beyond saying that back in 2013, a friends group was set up to try and help this beautiful place that was and still is in need of some love. Fast forward from 2013 to 2020, and Friends of Warriston Cemetery have around 80 members who pay a yearly contribution. We do regular volunteering work, often in partnership with other organisations. We have a shed full of tools, a website, social media channels, a committee with loads of talents. We do tours, and we even appear in books, most recently Tomb with a View. Getting there has not always been easy, but it has been a lot of fun. And I thought I'd share 3 things that the 2020 version of me would say to myself back in 2013. The first is start small, but dream big. Our first goal when we set up in the summer of 2013 was to get the cemetery and ourselves prepped for a Doors Open Day weekend that September. It gave us a tangible aim and a date to aim for. And it also allowed us an early opportunity to take stock of progress, including opening up paths, highlighting key grave markers, and prepping a little tour. We had several hundred visitors on Doors Open Day that year, and it really raised a lot of awareness. But do also keep in mind that longer term vision. This is actually quite tricky, given the range of views people will have on any cemetery. And for us, it was very much about striking a balance between a cemetery that is loved and used, is biodiverse, and also importantly, is an active cemetery. Secondly, I'd suggest spreading the load. We found that early on there was a lot of enthusiasm, but organisation tended to fall on a small number of people, particularly Caroline Gerard and Bob Reinhardt in our case. So do try to spread the load where you can and call on different people's expertise. And as part of that, think about what kind of skills you might need. We have a Twitter account and a very active Facebook account, thanks largely to a volunteer who's also a communications specialist. Thank you, Sheila. And third is partnership. For Warriston, there are loads of people with a vested interest, from people who live nearby and like to have a walk, to the council's statutory responsibilities for the site in terms of biodiversity and as a working cemetery, and to people around the world who have family buried there. There are lots of individuals and groups who are bought in and feel a sense of ownership. This can be a huge resource of potential partners, but there can also be tensions. For Greyfriars, I'm guessing there will also be different groups to engage with, including the commercial sector, which is less of an issue at Warriston. Communication through events like this is absolutely essential. And the key relationship for us is the council, who have been brilliant. They've been supportive, they've provided tools and advice, and we constantly check in with them about our plans. I'd recommend that they are your first and ongoing port of call. Just by being in the cemetery and doing stuff, you'll get interest and support, and you'll have fun and you'll make friends in the doing. And you'll find out a lot about an amazing site. My office in normal times is nearby, and I look forward to popping in and seeing what you're up to. And if we in Warriston can help in any way, just let us know.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Jeff. And it's good to know that somebody will be watching, and and that there is an offer handed over there from the Friends of Warriston to help with future work. So as mentioned, I thought it might be helpful just now to give a bit of background really to some of the questions that I'm anticipating you might have in terms of why we might need a Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard and who else the group might be able to work with. So why is there a need for a Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard? Well, quite simply, there isn't one. The former Greyfriars Kirkyard Trust, which was established in 1978, disbanded in 2009. Now, the Trust did some absolutely amazing work to benefit Greyfriars Kirkyard. Now, this included fundraising to carry out some very major repairs for some of the most wonderful of the 17th century mural monuments. They fundraised to support the creation of a conservation management plan and a landscape management plan. They carried out a major recording project of gravestone condition in conjunction with the Edinburgh College of Art and their students. So they did a really fantastic number of really important pieces of conservation work. But this was never really a community group which was open to members of the public to join. In fact, I don't think there's ever been a Friends of group to take a lead on encouraging or coordinating community involvement with Greyfriars Kirkyard. And it's worth pointing out that Greyfriars' neighbourhood profile is quite complex for community engagement. Much of the very limited local housing is short-term lets, and over the last few years, the local community has become increasingly fragmented. Additionally, Greyfriars Kirk is a gathered congregation, so a new Friends of group would offer a clear and currently missing route for people to come together in support of the graveyard. Now, there are many reasons for people to get involved with the Friends group, to help them feel more connected to the local community, to make new friends, to learn more about where they live, or develop a new interest or skill. They may want to give something back to their local community and feel that they're making a difference, leaving Edinburgh in a better state for future generations, all of the points that Charlotte so eloquently raised. Now, the Friends can offer a way to identify common priorities for the Kirkyard, but they can represent and include different interest areas and different perspectives. Now, Greyfriars Kirkyard no longer fulfills the primary function for which it was established, namely as burial provision for the local community. Now, we know that the graveyard might have many roles within present-day society, and the long list includes being a local heritage site, a tourist attraction, a green space, an educational resource, a family history resource, a place of pilgrimage and setting for Greyfriars Kirk, or is used as a local amenity, as a pedestrian thoroughfare, social meeting place, or a space for health and well-being. And I think it's fair to say that we are still working towards finding a balanced, multifunctional use for the Kirkyard. But what is really important to recognise is that the local community are key stakeholders, and that the Friends group can help shape discussions on managing the graveyard's various roles. Now, I want to stress that a new Friends group can call on help and support for both practical hands-on work and thinking about bigger, more strategic issues. There are two important bodies that the Friends can work with. Now, the first of these is the Greyfriars Kirkyard Strategic Management Group, which includes the City of Edinburgh Council as the graveyard's owners and managers. And it also includes Edinburgh World Heritage, who alongside the City of Edinburgh Council have a responsibility for managing the World Heritage site. But it also includes representatives of the graveyard's main users, such as Greyfriars Kirk, Edinburgh University, amongst others. Now, the second group that the Friends can work with is an umbrella forum for all Edinburgh Graveyard Friends of groups. Now, this forum was set up as a joint initiative by Edinburgh World Heritage and the Friends of Warriston Cemetery a number of years ago. And it was really very much to provide an opportunity, a way for all of the different Friends of groups to kind of share knowledge and resources and to help one another by keeping them up to date with the different groups' work, help with kind of things like problem solving, recommending good insurance or how to carry out safe working, and also to kind of point out funding opportunities or other ways that individual groups could to secure resources to enhance the work that they were carrying out. So having set the scene now for a new Friends of group, and hopefully having inspired you through Charlotte's heartfelt call for help and through Jeff's inspirational description of the work of the Friends of Warriston Cemetery, I think let's get down to the main part of today's meeting, which is really finding out what you think about creating a new Graveyard Friends of group for Greyfriars Kirkyard, what it might achieve, and to gauge your interest in getting involved with such a group, and also to hear your thoughts more generally on Greyfriars Kirkyard. So don't forget, just use your thumb icon on Zoom, or put your thumb up to show that you would like to say something, or let's have a look at the chat and see what type of comments that have been fed back so far. So I'll just kind of see who we can invite now to speak.
We currently have nothing in the chat, so that's one area that we don't have.
Colin, did you want to tell us something? Did you want to say something, Colin?
Yes, I can do. What do I do to my iPad? Am I?
Oh yes, we can. Oh, we can hear you now, Colin. Please go ahead. Tell us. Share your thoughts with us.
Okay. Colin Cargill is my name. 12 years ago, I retired and became a tour guide on the Edinburgh tour buses. The buses that go around from Waverley Bridge or now St Andrews Square, selling Edinburgh to the tourists who used to come to Edinburgh and hopefully will soon be returning. I developed an interest in Edinburgh generally, but why I joined to begin with was because I was very interested in Edinburgh's history. And not all that many years ago, but 5 years ago, I joined Edinburgh World Heritage, where I met Susan. And at that, or soon after that, I joined two Friends group, which haven't been mentioned tonight. I don't know where that is. I joined the Friends of New Calton and then the Friends of Old Calton, and was involved with Susan. The main part that I played as a senior tour, I've been tour guiding for 12 years. But my main interest in joining was to try and sell the wonders of Edinburgh and particularly the World Heritage site to the, I'm dealing with tourists 100% of the time in the tour bus. But I saw this as the Friends group, the two Friends groups that I joined. I saw that as an opportunity to sell Edinburgh to the locals in Edinburgh, who sadly are like a lot of people do in other towns and cities, take their own city for granted. And because of the World Heritage Site status that Edinburgh enjoys, the very prestigious accreditation, I felt it was any little that I could do to try and sell this, the importance of the World Heritage Site to the locals, who mostly take it for granted. In that connection, I therefore, in conjunction with the other members, and particularly Susan, who's the driving force, we did a number of tours. We advertised them on the Edinburgh World Heritage Site website, and we got reasonable numbers of people, and I like to think that maybe assisted the general Edinburgh population to become more involved in the heritage. The heritage of Edinburgh is so important that we try and promote the heritage to the local population. So one thing, my strength would be doing these tours, but I'm also interested to participate in any other way.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, Colin. That's really heartening to hear. And I think you're entirely right. It was a real joy working with you on the Old Carlton and New Carlton burial ground projects, and to help develop awareness and understanding of two historic burial grounds that most people who came along didn't really know anything about, who were local. In fact, we had a terrible time, didn't we, Colin? Because we'd find that we'd ask people to come along to a tour at New Carlton burial ground, and they'd all be at Old Carlton burial ground. They'd always go to the wrong site. So that's great, brilliant. Well, I'm very excited to write your name down at the top of our list of new volunteers to contact. That's absolutely wonderful, thank you. And I believe that we're going to hear next from Fraser Patterson.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Fraser. Thank you.
Okay, great. I've noted down 5 separate things, but we can put that to one side just now. Clearly, COVID is going to have a significant part to play until at least spring next year in the can and cannot do's. I'm also well acquainted with Caroline from Friends of Warriston. In one of the more recent newsletters that were sent out to members, by recollection, it made note, aside from maybe Caroline verbally having mentioned this, that when the initial restrictions came in, people were going in on their own as and when to do a bit of, if we loosely phrase it, restoration work. Then they could go in 2s and 3s, and that was how they were handling things. I'm sure Jeff will correct me if I'm wrong with any of that. But I'm sure you'll come in a moment or two if I'm incorrect, and I apologize in advance. So I was thinking, one of the bullet points, what could be considered by Friends of Greyfriars as the best activities to undertake whilst, again, for want of a better phrase, COVID was king. And that would include putting a website in place and having actively utilized social media channels to heighten awareness of the fact the group had been created and perhaps generate more interest, more active interest amongst the community of Edinburgh to become involved in the group. And as you've rightly mentioned, I think, Susan, by recollection, from further afield as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Fraser. I think you're absolutely right. We do need to recognise that whatever we do in the short term is going to need to kind of fit into Scottish Government regulations in terms of kind of safe working while we are still, in the throes of the pandemic. And we do need to recognise that this will exclude some of the people who might want to join in with the project. So we are also going to kind of reach out to local community groups who are in touch with other people, so that we can make sure that we try and draw as wider audience in as possible. So I think, yes, the idea of thinking at the moment how we can kind of promote the project through social media, and the idea of building a website sounds absolutely fantastic. And we probably ought to say as well that the actual kind of process of forming the project, thinking about what the mission, the aims and objectives of the Friends group ought to be, and coming up with a kind of action plan for going forward. Those are all things that can still be taken forward at this point in time as well. Brilliant, thank you so much, Fraser. That was really helpful. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through now and see if anybody else has got their thumbs up who would like to join in. Can you see anybody who we can feedback comments from, Charlotte, from the chat? Oh, Gillian Tate. So I've unmuted you now, Gillian.
That's okay. I can unmute myself, I think. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where to start. There's so much in all this, but I actually live very close to Greyfriars, probably, I don't know if I live closer than anyone else here. I'm just at the end of the Grassmarket. And also, I've been going to Greyfriars Churkyard since I was a student here many, many years ago, and doing all sorts of in 2015, I wrote a guidebook to Edinburgh called The 111 Places in Edinburgh That You Shouldn't Miss. And as part of that, I included Greyfriars, not from the point of view of Greyfriars Bobby and all that sort of tourism, but as a site worth discovering in its own right. But the observation that I first made then when I was researching it, that was just when the Harry Potter tourism was beginning. And I'm quite astonished at the growth of the commercial sector in the last 5 years. And even since COVID, I go up there, I walk through it all the time. I'm glad to say it's open as a thoroughfare at the moment. There are still an awful lot of tours going on, and but the standard of them is just so variable. I mean, I have heard a lot of absolute nonsense talked, and an awful lot of the visitors who come are only interested in seeing the graves that supposedly relate to Harry Potter. And I actually recently gave a talk online about some of my work on guidebooks to an American audience, and all they were interested in knowing about was, in terms of Edinburgh, was Harry Potter and Outlander. And I think I've noticed this really in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. Enormous growth in the old town of interest from that. There seems to be much less interest in the genuine history of Edinburgh, and this mythical stuff has taken such an extent that people now refer to Heriot's School as Hogwarts and things, which is just something that I'm quite depresses me, actually. There's but also my observation about the Greyfriars in general. I was aware of all the work that went on in conserving the monuments. My background before that was in conservation and museum work, and I applaud what went on in previous years. But I have to say that more recently, you know, I've seen tourists observe, especially Americans. They're shocked at how run down some of the monuments look, just in terms of what they were expecting. Probably they expect something that looks like Disneyland, and in fact, you know, a lot of the monuments are, in terms of conservation, crumbling and the weeds growing out of them. But anyway, these are just some general. But I would be interested in volunteering in any capacity at all. Whatever, however we can begin, because even under COVID, it's a great opportunity to start something that. And I say, as a member of the local community of long-standing, who is only.
Well, Gillian, thank you so much. That's really wonderful.
As well as virtually.
That's absolutely wonderful news to hear, and that's great. So I'm building up my kind of list of potential volunteers. That's absolutely tremendous, and I would be so interested in sitting down and talking to you and just learning from you just the ways in which the graveyard has changed over this period in time, because I think there has been some really significant changes, and I know that other people have been very concerned about the quality of information that's being delivered in some of these commercial tours. So I think there's a real opportunity to do some work that, you know, kind of casts some new perspectives on some of the stones in the graveyard. I mean, why don't we tell the true story of Tom Riddle, for example, his links to the kind of transatlantic slave trade, his links to kind of Scottish Enlightenment figures, all kinds of things. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much. So can I just check now with Charlotte? Do you have anybody else to feedback from?
First of all, Gillian Cooper would like to have a wee chat.
Okay, that's great, Gillian. So can we hear from you, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks very much. All the thoughts so far are really, really interesting. And I don't think I'm going to say anything that will surprise Susan or Charlotte, because we've spoken about this. I think I work at the Grassmarket Community Project, which is the social enterprise next to the Kirkyard, and also at Greyfriars Kirk. And we're all really looking forward to getting involved in this. And I think it would just be really great to make sure that we collaborate and celebrate and build on some of the groups that are already there. Susan, you've very much been talking to that anyway. So, you know, like the gardening group and the tour guides at the Kirk, and, you know, it'll just be great to be able to bring all these groups together, and hopefully the sum is greater than the parts. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that being able to talk to you know, the kind of long-standing history of the Kirkyard as the setting for the church, and what that means to people today, is really important. And there has been some fantastic community engagement which has been led by Greyfriars Kirk, and you're absolutely right, we want that to you know, kind of come into the kind of friends group. The friends group is there to be a vehicle for the whole community. And yeah, I really celebrate those points. Thank you so much, Gillian. I'm so pleased to have those made tonight.
I think we've next got Bryony wanting to speak.
Hello, I'm Bryony. My day job is as a digital officer, professionally with Historic Environment Scotland. So this is quite pertinent, but I'm very much here in my capacity as one of the rare local permanent residents near the Kirkyard. I'm interested in family history and genealogy, really. The Kirkyard was one of the first places I ever went to when I came to Edinburgh, well before I moved here. So it's kind of interesting, having been here as a long-term resident, that I haven't become more familiar with the stories there. And I think that this was just a really interesting place to kind of hear all these other stories and what other options there are to talk about it. I had a couple of points that kind of just struck me as we were talking about the different kinds of people that we could be reaching, or that the group might want to kind of target, especially around the international audience and the local audience. I think there's probably quite a lot of things that could be achieved for local young people, so students who are in the area, or residents that are in the area, as well as things that would benefit people becoming more aware of what the Kirkyard has to offer through platforms like TikTok, which I know you're talking about how really active it's been on Facebook and how active it's been on Twitter, but actually for very short stories telling the story of a grave, who was buried there, where they came from, and some sort of quite sharp delivery. It's a really, really good way of getting accurate information out and raising the profile of those people. I also wondered, in terms of stakeholders, obviously you touched on sort of the people internationally who maybe have people buried there. You've got the local residents, you've got the council, we've got the World Heritage site. Is there any engagement either through the Friends group or any work with World Heritage with people that are camping or sleeping rough in the park? You know, is there wider engagement going on with groups like Street Work?
Well, I should say that the Edinburgh World Heritage, as I said, that one of the ways that we are supporting the Friends group is through the Making Lasting Impressions project, that community project that we're delivering over the next 2 years. And so we have a large number of partner groups that we're working with through this project, which includes students at Edinburgh University. We're also working with a local primary school, a local secondary school. We are working with 2 youth groups, and we're also working with 2 organisations that work with people affected by homelessness. So that one of them has already been mentioned, that's the Grassmarket Community Project. And then we're also working with Invisible Cities. So, so there is quite a broad spectrum of engagement through that vehicle. But if we have a Friends group, then we have many more hands to the deck, and so that we can really develop an even broader engagement with local groups.
Right, next up we've got Joe Elliott wanting to speak. Hi, Joe. Just trying to unmute you, Joe. Oh, there you are.
Yes, thank you for that, Susan. I'm Joe Elliott. I'm Session Clerk of Greyfriars, and I'm also a trustee of the Grassmarket Community Project. So I have similar hats to Gillian Cooper. For a Friends group like this can be more effective if it has some money. And the support of Edinburgh World Heritage is is very welcome in that regard. There's also a potential source of revenue coming up as the council is developing a scheme to have a levy on tour guides, and Charlotte's husband, Jamie Costolfin, is very much involved with this. And I think the place it's got to is that it's going to committee shortly, and with a following wind, that will actually happen. And there are very large numbers of people coming through the Kirkyard, as we know, and part of the council's very welcome initiative is to put it in account, and even in these COVID times, there are large six-figure numbers of people coming through the Kirkyard. Now, I mean, that quite what will happen to that revenue is not clear to me. Clearly, some of it will be used by the council in improving the physical fabric. But if we could encourage them to at least lubricate the wheels of the friends group, that'll make things a great deal easier. And it means that effectively we're freed from the burden of fundraising, which is always a terrible pain.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Joe. I think that absolutely a really important point is to recognise that in order to be sustainable, that the kind of friends group needs to have a way of supporting itself. And I know that the council are quite keen to try and offer some modest financial support to the friends of groups who are taking on responsibility for the city's historic graveyards. And there are other ways that we can sort of generate some income through, for example, membership subscriptions, but it's also possible to encourage donations for other types of work. One of the things that Edinburgh World Heritage has already committed to doing is to paying to publish a guidebook to the graveyard, so that we can generate some funding through that route as well. But I really welcome your contribution, Joe, and pointing out how important it is for the group to be sustainable and self-sustaining financially. That's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can find some more thumbs.
We don't really seem to have any more questions just now, but I do have to say there's quite a number of people in the chat who are describing their interests and how much they all want to get involved. We've got Sandra, Isabel, Sean, Sue, Shona, Yvonne, Rosalind, Lisa. I'm sure I probably have missed some people out, but it's been fantastic actually just reading through what everybody's interests are. There's a lot of variety there, and it's really heartwarming to see people so interested and heavily involved and seem to be wanting to join in to create this friends group. So I really want to thank everyone for putting their interests down here. Oh, you two, like, just seen you come through.
You've got an amazing list, actually, just looking at the chat. The amount of skills and experience and ideas coming out of that is brilliant. It's absolutely great. And I didn't know either that there was a monument to Bhopal in Greyfriars Cemetery. You learn something new every day.
Brilliant. Well, I feel incredibly excited that everybody has kind of just risen to this kind of invitation to come on board and get involved. That's brilliant. So I'm wondering then, are there any questions that anybody has that they would like to have answered? Or have we really dealt with all of those? Okay, brilliant. Well, I think what we need to do then is kind of draw things together and let you know what we think the next steps ought to be following on from this evening. Oh, so that's great. So I'm just answering the questions now from Lexi and from Fraser. When do we hear about the next stage? How do I sign up? Right, great. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to send out an email to everybody who's signed up for the meeting tonight. And that's going to give you details of how we're going to contact you. And we're just going to set down the kind of program that we're imagining is going to happen over the next few months. So essentially what we want to do is we want to have another meeting which just draws together everybody who said that they want to volunteer. And that should happen at the beginning of December. And at that meeting, I think we'll go into a little bit more detail about what the priorities and aims and objectives of the Friends group might be. Looking back at some of the points that Jeff made, what is the first manageable thing that we might want to tackle? But then we'll also have to do some of the thinking that Charlotte pointed out as well. I have to start thinking about things like constitutions, things like a managing committee, so that the work of running the Friends group is a shared activity. So we will get in touch with you. I will have a look at everybody's comments after tonight, and just kind of, Charlotte and I will just go away and we'll just kind of sit down and start to feel super excited about all of the interest and all of the skills that we can draw on. So yes, let's meet again, everybody who's interested in being a volunteer at the start of December. We will draft together, we'll shape up a bit of a proposal. It'd be great to kind of share that with other people and get some community buy-in, some community support. And then let's think about having another meeting in mid-January. Let's all get Christmas and New Year out of the way, and then we can start to really do things together, make a difference. So I'm just thrilled. Thank you all so very much for all the fantastic comments, all the offers of support. Charlotte, you have done a fantastic job at raising this interest. Well done. Well done for putting your head over that parapet. Jeff, Friends of Warriston, massive inspiration. And Jeff's absolutely right. If you haven't been to the cemetery, you must go. I do some teaching for the botanics. And sometimes we do kind of projects where we take students into the graveyards. And every time I take them into the World Heritage site, they always say lovely things, but everybody loves Warriston. They love it because it has such a special atmosphere and such a special environment. So it is really worth a visit if you haven't already been. Charlotte, would you like to say something just to close the meeting?
I just want to say is I'm just overwhelmed by all the support that people are giving, and it is so positive to see that everybody's wanting to work together to create a Friends of group to look after and help support the stakeholders, keep this site, well, create an even better environment for this site, because Greyfriars is incredibly important. It's been around for hundreds of years. We want it to be around a few hundred years more once we're no longer here. So I want to thank everyone so much.
Brilliant. Well, let's give everybody a kind of big round of applause, and we'll just see everybody soon. Thank you so much. Bye now.